Awesome. Well, we have some great people rolling in here. My name is Rachel. I am going to pass this off in just a second to our amazing host for the evening. But this is our 5th series in our community conversations with Vibe Hive. We're so excited to have you join. If you are watching or if you're in the room with us, I encourage you to change your view to gallery view so that you can see all the people in our wonderful community. This is a really great topic. Adam Galensky really set the stage for us. The time of year is quite important for sharing our voice. There's a lot of talk about voting. Obviously, that's one way to share our voice. But without further ado, I want to pass this off to Anthony, our host for the evening. He is a co-founder of Vibe Hive. He is very much about amplifying the voices of others, really just amplifying their ideas, their thoughts, their passions. And so take it away, Anthony. I'm excited to meet everyone that joined. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
No longer. Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you, Rachel, for that introduction and for queuing up the video for us. And thank you to everyone for tuning in with us tonight. As Rachel mentioned, this is a really important topic. Because it's one of those topics that we can really just use in our day-to-day life, and especially right now with everything going on in the world, with this election coming up. Making our voice heard is absolutely something that we need to do. So I wanted to just kind of start off by, this is a community conversation. So the idea is that we're all kind of just conversing about these different topics, about the TED Talk. And then as with past conversations, it always kind of ends up, going off in kind of its own beautiful direction. I have like a few little questions here and stuff, but it's a very loose format. So it's more just about, us kind of all getting together and sharing about experiences. And I think that that'd be a really great way to kind of start off is to, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to anyone who wants to share maybe a time where they either spoke up and it was really powerful, or they didn't speak up and then later regretted it. And then kind of how, like what you might have learned from this TED Talk that could help you, empower you to speak up the next time. So with that, I will kind of open the floor to anybody who would like to share.
I'll share. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
So when I watched the video, I thought about 2 separate occasions. The one occasion where I was able to speak up, I was a mom, 3rd time over. So I kind of felt like I had a little power, and I had breastfed all 3 of my babies. And so I went into a dentist appointment for my son, and she tried to give me facts that I knew wasn't the truth. And so I felt empowered to tell her, no, that's not the case. And we were actually going to leave and go to another dentist because she was giving me all kind of crazy information. Probably if it was my first child, being just out of college, I probably would have not had the power and just said, okay. But that case, I actually went out in the lobby and I says, do you actually come here to this dentist? Because you shouldn't, because she's crazy. And then the other time where I felt like I should have spoken up, that I didn't have the power, was actually with my best friend and in a group of other people that they weren't my friend, they were her friends, but I felt like I didn't have the power to speak up. And so oftentimes, I would say something and it would just be disregarded. And so I kind of felt like, why don't they listen to me? And so then I would take a step back and I wouldn't respond at all. And then when I would, like in a chat, we were in a phone chat where everybody's laughing and joking. And so I wouldn't say anything for months. And then finally, when I would say something, like I would ask a question and I would be ignored. And so eventually I said, seems like I'm being ignored. And they were like, oh, you're not, you're just being overly sensitive. So that particular situation, I just felt like I didn't have any power whatsoever, but I was starting to feel like, okay, maybe if I said this, they would actually take my perspective, but they never did.
So did you end up staying with that group chat, or did you?
I'm still in the group chat. I don't engage much anymore. I might do a thumbs up or emoji, but I don't ask questions. I don't, none of that. I just, yeah.
So it's kind of like when you're not heard, or when you don't, when the space isn't created for you to be able to speak up, and you're not heard, then it's just like a total turnoff, right?
Yeah. And I thought about leaving the group, but I think because my best friend is in the group, and it's so crazy because I'm 43 years old. It seems like this is a childish thing. I'll just leave the group, but I don't.
What do you mean, like a childish thing? Which part of it? Like staying in the group just to stay in the group?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why would I stay in the group if they don't hear my voice?
Yeah. Well, something to think about.
That's a can of worms.
Yeah.
for the human psyche.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, April. Anybody else like to share?
I'm gonna flip this on the TED a little bit, where in the past, conversation kind of got sparked up between some friends, and in my effort to come to the defense of one of my friends involved with it, I didn't have all the context or the understanding of the greater whole. And so I ended up hurting the situation by speaking up as opposed to helping. And then had to check myself when I received the appropriate reaction from the other people involved at the time. And thankfully my friend was great enough of a friend to be like, hey, I got it. You don't have to worry about it. I appreciate it. This is how we're taking care of it, and this is why. And I was able to go, oh, my bad. Sorry, I need to step back and get off the soapbox. But I thought at the time I was doing the right thing, only to find out that while the intentions were right, if we don't take the time to really understand what's going on with everybody else, we can also, just as easy as we can help the situation, we can also hurt the situation. And that was one of the cases where, for me, is a very big lesson to learn, listen first and like understand, and then like listen to understand and not listen to reply, kind of a thing. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's for me, one of the things that came up with this video was, and especially kind of with the climate of, the swirling humanity, everyone's got their ideas and opinions thing, and also kind of like the self-respect. So it's kind of like that healthy balance between taking care of yourself and also being, like Brian, you were saying, aware of others in that situation, and because my kind of first reaction was like, well, we should always speak up, but like you just shared, maybe it's not always appropriate or needed or wanted, or beneficial to the situation. So that's nice that your friend was like, hey, bro, it's cool. Yeah, that was nice that he spoke up and told you that, I don't need you to speak up for me, sort of thing,
Yeah, and it wasn't that I felt like he couldn't handle it. It's just, yeah, in the moment, human reaction, human instinct popped in, and it was just like, the claws came out a little bit, but then it was also being open enough to receive what was, what they brought back in return, as well. That thankfully made it a better situation at the end of it. But yeah.
Cool. Does anybody else have an experience or a situation you'd like to share with the group regarding to speaking up for yourself or not?
But what I did do, and the way that I did turn something very painful into something very powerful, was I had an opportunity to speak at Harvard last year, and I saw a Hopi proverb, a Hopi prophecy that says, when the grandmother speaks, the world will heal. So I used that as my platform to speak. And I really do think, as you were saying, the time now is not for us to not speak up. We do need to use discernment. But one of the things that I got from the TED Talk was the mama bear and the advocating for other people and advocating for those that don't have a voice, whether it's children or single moms or whatever, or single dads. So I ended up taking that, excuse me, very painful situation and turned it into something positive by speaking out.
Amazing. I got chills when you said that. I still have goosebumps. The grandmother speaks thing.
Yeah. Very powerful prophecy. And it's coming to pass. They're saying, I don't know if you know who Zach Bush is. I was listening to him speak yesterday, and he talked about that feminine energy and the mothers speaking out now, and women starting to step into their empowerment, because I personally feel that's a big piece of what's been missing, what we need to heal. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Hold on, I got something in the chat here.
I want to add to that. Gave me chills as well. It made me think of a dear friend. She was hoping to actually hop on as well, so I may have to connect y'all offline, Deborah, but she's a grandmother as well, and you wouldn't know it, glowing just like you. I mean, I was kind of surprised to hear you say your grandmother.
Yeah.
But Anthony and I know her, and Frank, who's on the call as well, from our healing community, and she very much has shared so much wisdom about the healing journey as a grandmother. So that's a really neat, I guess, would you call it a proverb, or it was a
It's a Hopi prophecy.
Hopi prophecy. That's right. Okay.
And interestingly enough, I ended up in Sedona, Arizona. That's where I live now. So I'm actually trying to reach out to them and study a little bit more, to gain a full understanding of what that prophecy is. And there's much more complexity to the story, because the grandchild ended up not being ours. So that's part of the speaking out part. So I'm no longer a grandmother. But again, it happened just as it should, because it gave me the courage and the strength I needed to really start speaking out and find my voice again. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, Rachel, did you want to share? Did you have I feel like you've got something you can pull from memory here for us.
I have many. I definitely, it's funny, April, when you mentioned the dentist, because it brought up a time that I at first didn't speak out, and it happened to be at the dentist. And then it kind of ate away. Sometimes when something like that happens, I let it sit, rather than beat myself up and be like, I should have, woulda, coulda. I just let it sit. And then it ends up being an opportunity. If, the next encounter rolls around, I don't allow it to happen twice. And so basically what happened was my dentist, who he had been my dentist since I was a kid. And just, I think kind of over the years had just been, don't worry, it was not like inappropriate, like female male. He just would make kind of jabs or commentaries about my finances that were like totally not his place to say anything. And he finally just said something that was just a little too much, and it got to me, but it kind of shocked me so much that and I wasn't at a place in my healing journey. I'm a singer-songwriter, and that has been a big piece of my healing, of like learning to speak out and speak and sing my own words. I had done covers and sung other people's songs for so many years. So I was just so shocked. And then of course, with the dentist, you typically go every 6 months. And 6 months later, I was like, I'm gonna do it. And it was almost a little more uncomfortable, because I had to bring up, what had happened 6 months prior that he probably didn't even remember. And I was about to say I called him out on it, but another friend of ours has taught me the phrase, call someone in. So instead of calling someone out, I'm learning to call them in. And I called him in and brought it to his attention, and it was clear it likely wasn't going to. He did apologize, but it didn't feel like enough. So I don't go to that dentist anymore. But it was very, I guess, cathartic. It was healing to at least just say how I felt and how their words made. So that was kind of a combo of like not speaking out and then later speaking out. And I guess that came from, like, to bring it back to Adam's talk, I guess that would, I don't know what that would fall into. It wasn't like expertise or passion, but more so, I don't know which of the categories it falls into, but regardless, it was worth it, as difficult as it was. And then Brian, I don't know, I wanted, what you said hit hard as well, about there's such a big piece of speaking out in the listening as well. That it's not just the speaking out, it's listening and knowing who you're speaking to. I don't know, it's a tricky balance, because there's times when I want to just say exactly how I feel, but I don't.
Why don't you talk about that Facebook Live?
Oh gosh, yeah, actually that I was about to bring that up. Yeah, I went on Facebook Live with the purpose of, like, at first bringing up a discussion, and it turned into kind of a public processing for me. I chose to pull the video because it did the opposite of what my mission in life is, which is to spark conversation. And I got what I call my rage monster. Her name is Laura. She came out in full force, and which, Facebook Live is not the best place for that to happen, but it was a great experience to feel what it felt to speak so honestly, but then have an opportunity to reflect and realize there's a much better way. And now actually a panel discussion is going to happen instead of a solo Facebook Live of me raging on the world. So there's always a reason why it comes out. And like you said, Deborah, it's all in divine timing. But yeah, there's an art to it for sure. And to still feel like I'm speaking authentically without not filtering, but I'll get to it. But yeah, that's what I've got for now. So there's a balance.
Without throwing daggers at someone else.
Yeah, without throwing daggers. That's a good point. Yeah.
I think a big part of speaking up too is when we're doing it in any forum, any situation, is speaking your truth is one thing, but in doing so, if you're condemning other people, that's where I think we have to be very aware of, again, context, understanding what's really happening, but between the individual, because as soon as we start making people wrong for their beliefs and what their truth is or what they believe to be true, then we're just as much in the wrong as we're trying to make them. So I think that's where, with speaking up as well, is having that awareness, is you can speak your truth, but like your rage monster came out and it went in the exact opposite direction, and therefore it had the opposite, and the intention wasn't there that you were trying to achieve per se.
And that TED Talk mentioned about humble perspective, and that was huge.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps again.
Yes, I've had to very much learn, because that was for me of like, if you look at levels of consciousness, the power god, which is red or level 3, like for me in the past, I'd speak a lot from that, and I would just railroad people and I'd make them wrong if it didn't align up with my belief systems at the time. And then I could see like the trail of destruction behind me because of it. And so I've had to come full circle and realize that, and then go back and rebuild all those bridges. So yeah.
All right. Well, we got Carlos and Frank and Carissa on. If any of you guys would like to share, we're just kind of sharing either, like an experience of a time where you spoke up and it went well, or it didn't go well, or a time when you didn't speak up, same thing, and it went well or didn't go well. Kind of in relation to the TED Talk. Would any of the three of you like to share?
I share.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I've been working in my company for 17 years, and for many, many, many years, because I feel an immigrant, and I don't know. It's because like I respect others that being in my company longer than me, I never say anything for anything. Even when I started my company, they hired me and I was working for like a month as a regular employee. And then they make me a manager. And every job that I've been having in the States, they always make me a manager. Even that I don't want to be a manager, they put me as a manager. So anyways, I'm telling you this because for what, 13 years, I didn't say anything at work. I just was doing my job and everything. But I noticed that my boss was really hard on me. So I don't know if because was the way that my mother raised me. I was raised Catholic. And in my family, like you cannot talk, you cannot say anything. You're gonna be so I have to be completely shut off. I never say anything, right? Until one day I was talking with my sister, and she's a school teacher, and she said, "Carlos, you need to speak your truth. If you don't speak your truth, they always gonna be behind you, hunting you." And I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yep." So I said, "Okay, let me try this and speak your truth." So like, yeah, every time that you feel something inside of you and you want to say it to your boss, just look into his eyes and tell him the reasons why this is happening, the reasons why you feel bad, the reasons why you don't want him to tell you that because it make you feel bad, you know? But stop just don't saying anything anymore. From this moment on, you're gonna raise your voice and you're gonna look in his eyes and go like, "Hey, you know what? Stop. This is it from this point. I don't want you to respect me anymore. I don't want you to say anything about this because I'm doing my job right. Okay? And if you want to ask me something, ask me like with a right tone of voice. And you don't want to hurt me with your words or anything because you have to respect me. And I'm not your son, you know?" And believe it or not, when I start doing this after many, many years, everything started changing like amazingly. Now my boss at work, he respect me a lot, and not just my boss, everybody else at work. And and I think speak your truth is amazing. It was a tool that I never used before because I was afraid the way that I was raised was another stuff. And I always was afraid like it never gonna work the way that I'm gonna put it out there or the way that I'm gonna say something. But it's like no, I need to give them not the tools, but give the person that I need to talk to the reasons why, so he can put in my shoes and understand in my shoes and through my eyes what I'm feeling and what is it hurting me. And if you guys do that, believe me, it's gonna work amazingly. I don't know if any of you already passed for this at work or in a family reunion or with a boyfriend or girlfriend. I mean, it happened in any situation, in any scenario of life. But for me, it was a huge, huge uh, learning from my sister. So, does anybody have anything to say about this?
Well, it's like setting the standard of acceptable behavior with you, you know, like within your relationship with your boss or within relationship with your family. It's like, look, you know, this is the way that I feel, and you may not understand, but you're not going to talk to me that way, or else I'm not going to be a part of this relationship anymore. You know, like,
I think when you stand by yourself and you look and speak up, people is going to think it twice next time before they say something to you. I mean, if you are writing your voice and you're not shaking or anything, I think the best way to do this is do the first step, you know? I look at them and say, "I'm not joking, this is real, so you're gonna respect me, okay?" And that's it. And from that moment, believe me, the person they're gonna think twice before jump on you again.
awesome. Frank, you're muted.
I thought the group was muted. Anyway, I'm not muted now. I'm from Brooklyn, so speaking up for myself in most situations has never been a problem for me, especially at work. So when I came, and you say, what was the outcome? Well, some of the people in my first long-term job after the Air Force did not let my outspoken nature bug them. And they recognized my talent, whereas others were totally put off by it, and they had a much lower appreciation for what I could do. And a lot of that depended on where they came from and how they were raised, you know, what part of the country, that sort of stuff. And I learned some things about that. But at that point, I was still pretty young and thinking, look, I am who I am, take it or leave it. No problem. When I came out to Atlanta, and started working at the last job I already had 23 years of experience and an MBA. So not only did I really know what I was doing, I also knew how it fit in the corporation. And so I would give feedback all the way up to the chief information officer level and to the vice president level. And on one incident, the vice president took my email to the meeting to her direct reports and handed out assignments based on my email, which I thought was pretty impressive. And so one of the other ones was the company's position was one thing and my position was another. And I was vocal about my position, and somebody said I didn't care about the company or I was disloyal or something like that. And this was in a group meeting. And I said, don't care about the company. I care about the company so much that I am willing to put my job on the line and speak what's on my mind, because I think the company's making a really big mistake. And I think the policy that you're trying to implement is a really big mistake. And he didn't have anything to say to me after that. And it was always amazing when a high-level manager was in a room and nobody had anything to say until I said something. And I would say something, which sometimes the manager did not like at all. But after I said it, all of a sudden, several other people in the room had something to say about the same subject, that somebody's got to break the ice. Great. That's me at work. But a long time ago, 1975, a man wrote a book called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And so in social situations with people I like, I really, really, really hate looking like the bad guy. I always want to look like the good guy. So I say yes to things that I really don't think are a good idea. And I don't do things that are going to run against the grain because I don't want to feel like the bad guy. And I've had that's been a problem in marriages, and that's been a problem in some social relationships, because if you're not willing to speak up for yourself, people take advantage. And so I have been taken advantage of a lot. And Adam addressed both of those differences in situations, speaking about power and other perspective and all of that stuff. You know, that it changes radically depending on the situation.
Awesome. I love that part that I'm kind of just dropping like little tidbits that all of you are saying kind of in the chat thread as kind of like our highlights or something. But I like, Frank, how you said, you know, that what you were saying when after you spoke up, then other people then had the courage to like say something. So in that way, speaking up is absolutely a form of leadership.
I had a manager, I think he was at the vice presidential level or senior director or something. And he was having these meetings, maybe weekly, maybe monthly. And we were in a group meeting and he said, so what do you think about these meetings? And nobody had anything to say. And finally, oh yeah, and the meetings were all of his direct reports would report on what their group was doing to the entire group. And none of it had anything to do with my group. And what my group was doing didn't have anything to do with what the other groups were doing. And these meetings would go long because he had a lot of direct reports. And so he was in a meeting with my group and said, so what do you think about these meetings? Dead silence. And finally, I kind of went, he said, yeah, Frank. I said, I think they're a complete waste of time. None of the things that are talked about in this meeting have anything to do with me. And I have a lot of work that you want me to do. And you're wasting an hour and a half of my time every week to listen to this stuff that has no effect on anything I do. He did not like that. My boss was taken aback. But that's when other people, including managers, said, you know, if you would make them like once a month or every other month or something like that, it would be more useful. But they do take up a whole lot of time. The direct reports have to prepare all this. They have to prepare their report every month. And that takes away from what they're doing. It also takes away from the time of what the work, because you're stopping everybody who works for you for an hour and a half from doing anything when they could be using their time more productively. And he totally changed how he ran the meetings. I think they went to every other month, then they went to biannually. But my point of view was, look, I got an MBA. I got more than 20 years in this business. I know how I've seen people do everything you can think of from both the corporate standpoint and from my specialty standpoint. And so I feel it's my duty to provide feedback. And if you don't want my feedback, then I need to find another job because that's not a fit for me.
Yeah.
So one last thing, I know I'm talking too much, but one last thing was we had a project that had a heavy deadline and it looked like we were way behind. And so our boss and his boss were calling everybody one at a time into their office for a come to Jesus meeting. And, you know, people were going in and scared to go in, and people came out looking beat up. And then I went in and they said, you know, if you can't get your job done and blah, 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 we'll give it to somebody else. I said, really? Okay, is that going to get it done on time? No. Who's going to have to teach them how to do the thing that I'm doing that you want me to finish on time? You. So if you'd stop taking me off the thing you want done and giving me other crap to do that's taking me away from it, I'll have it done on time and I'll have it done in time with no problem. But you're playing in a game of cards and you got no cards. I'm the only one at the table that has a hand. And I got them left. And later, one of my coworkers came over and said, you know, we kept walking by Steve's office, and every time we'd walk by, there'd be somebody new sitting in the room looking very uncomfortable. And the two managers were sitting there talking to him. And then we walked by when you were in the room, and you looked very comfortable, and the two managers looked very uncomfortable. And I that was one moment I thought that was very high praise. And that's the thing about having power.
Yeah.
When you have expertise and you have a lot of evidence and you're committed, you can speak up for yourself. And I wasn't worried about looking like the good guy or the bad guy then. But if it had been a family, you know, I went through 17 years of marriage to my second wife, and I may have said no to her once.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah. I think there's two really awesome things you brought up there. Like who's got the cards, you know, I think that speaks to what Adam was talking about and I love that in the talk, he relates power to our ability to speak up. And so we're definitely gonna hit on this power piece. And then the other thing that you said, Frank, that I really liked was that it's your duty to provide feedback. So, in an employer-employee type situation, or in a partnership, or in a relationship, or as an American citizen, with voting, like, it is our duty to provide feedback. And so by speaking up and using our voice, we're providing feedback in the voting situation to the country, saying we want these people to hold this elective office or whatever. So let's if, unless Carissa, you had an experience you wanted to share.
We can move on. I was just going to quickly say, kind of on the flip side of speaking up but not speaking up, if we sometimes pause when we want to speak up, especially in like a group setting, it gives us time and space for someone else to say something that might be more interesting than what we were going to say.
You would say that.
And that's all.
That's funny. I do, real quick, before we go into the power piece, I do want to share an experience that I had recently, because it relates to like everything that's happened this year with race relations and the Black Lives Matter movement, and George Floyd, and all this stuff. So, when this all first started, I kind of felt like I didn't it wasn't my place to speak up. I felt like I just wanted to kind of hold this space for oppressed people to use their voice, and just kind of be the container and the amplifier for that, because I felt that, who wants to hear another white cis male's opinion about anything right now? Just take a back seat, just kind of chill, bro. Like, it's all good. And that was, I think, good to a point, but I also, on the flip side of that, realized that I also wasn't speaking out enough, because I needed to show up there to speak up for others and advocate for others, to kind of play that mama bear type of card, to help speak up for people who are disenfranchised. And so, that's something that I'm working on now. And it's really, this year has brought that to my awareness, the importance of speaking up for people that are less fortunate than me, because I'm a white male. I'm in the top privilege class in this country. Both my parents are married. I've had a very privileged life. I don't know what it's like, but I want to be empathetic to the situation, and I want to help those people who are going through those difficult times, whether that be with police brutality, or voter suppression, or wealth inequality, or just, there's so many different things that we can tackle. And I just feel like it's an opportunity for me to speak up more about those things, kind of more from a mama bear role than I'm not speaking up because I have to for me. I'm speaking up because I have to for my brothers and sisters. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And there's one time with this one kid that I know from high school where he posted some just super ignorant stuff on Facebook about the Black Lives Matter movement. And I was like, that's it. I can't not say anything. And that was kind of like the turning point of me speaking up. And of course, he ended up calling me brainwashed, which is kind of funny because he's a Trump supporter, and telling me that I drank the Kool-Aid and being lied to, and he's a Trump supporter and stuff and whatever. Anyways, that was kind of the lid that kind of okay, it's time for me to now, I can't just sit back and watch him make this post. I ended up actually unfriending him and blocking him because he kept just railing my friends in comments and name calling, and was just spewing baseless stuff. So I don't know how productive that one was, but at least it got me into the mode of speaking up for people who clearly aren't represented in this particular person's friend group or peer group or neighborhood or whatever. It's we've been on the ground in Atlanta. This is real. You're a white male. You don't know. So just kind of sit back and just chill out, bro. So anyways, that's my super quick experience there. I wanted to go ahead. Yeah.
So in the beginning, when everything started coming to a head, mind you, this has been going on for years. Few years ago, we started seeing it just with all of the stuff that was happening 2016, 17, all the way up until now. And to be honest, for me, going through all of this, I got a new perspective on my own culture. I was raised very sheltered, not by two parents, even though my mom and dad were never married, but it was weird. I was in the hood, but I was very sheltered. They didn't let me see all of this stuff. So I didn't learn a lot about my own culture living in the hood until just recently, learning about historical things that have happened to Black people, because everybody's tried to keep me sheltered. I'm the seventh of my family. So when all of this started happening, it was very traumatic to me. Number one, I was like, what? That's not true. I learned all of this stuff and it's not true. Oh my God. And then having a husband who was a police officer and having the conversation about, you know, what's right, what's not right. And then my friends, the white friends that I had, that we thought the same, they thought differently. So I'm here having a traumatic experience, having 3 sons and feeling fearful and not knowing how to process that myself. So then you have some of your white friends who they don't know what to do, and they're asking all kinds of questions. It's overwhelming. You don't know what to say. But then, like you were saying, Anthony, that what I appreciated from my white friends and brothers and sisters was the support, the ear, listening to understand, and then saying, okay, enough is enough. I'm speaking out. But if you jump the gun too soon without being the support, being the ear, and I'm emotional already thinking about it, and having our back, it wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean? It had to have a specific order, because African Americans were still trying to process, like, this is really happening. Like people really have these thoughts that this is not a human rights. You think it's political. It's not political. My mom, who is 85, she was a sharecropper. My mom was in the midst of all of the stuff that people think happened years ago. No, it's my mom. And so our elders, they don't even speak on these things because it's so painful. Like the stuff that's happening now, the millennials that are speaking out, the elders, they don't speak on this because it's so painful. So when I have people like Anthony and other people who, I'll go on Instagram, I'll see Rachel, I'll see Anthony, and they'll post things. Sometimes I don't like it, but I'm watching, I'm going, so grateful for them. So grateful for them, because the people that I thought were my friends, they're posting pictures of Black men and their pants hanging down and fire, and saying, oh, you don't want the next president because this is what you'll get. They're going to take control of our United States. One of a friend of mine posted recently, he says, I voted today, I vote for the USA. And I thought, so my vote, I'm not voting for my country that I was born in. So you're saying because you voted for Trump, your vote is for the United States of America. The nerve.
Well, and this kind of brings it back to, you know, the speaking up, like all of our voices matter, you know. And we're the United States that we're supposed to be. The name of our country is the United States of America, you know. So definitely when we can come together, unite as one people, speak up for each other, for our brothers and sisters of different races, different colors, different classes, different creeds, you know, different thoughts, opinion structures, whatever. It's just like really, you know, that's the power to the people, you know, that's where it is. Definitely. Thank you for sharing, April.
Mm.
Frank, you have your hand up there.
I do have my hand up there. A long time ago, Kenny Loggins and I can't remember what McDonald's first name is, wrote a song called What a Fool Believes.
Michael.
Michael McDonald, thank you. And the line is, what a fool believes he sees, no wise man has the power to reason away. And somebody brought that up to my mind recently. Some, deep thinker said, it is impossible to change an opinion in someone's mind with reason if the opinion was not placed there through reason. And so there's almost no point in arguing with, I'm sorry, since I'm on the other side, with arguing with a Trump supporter or a racist to argue them out of their viewpoint when their viewpoint was not placed there by reason. It got placed in their head when they were little children, and it's all they heard all the time they were growing up, and they were taught it in high school. And to talk them out of it, it's not going to happen. The only way that changes is through experience. And I grew up in Brooklyn. We had, where I lived, there were mishmash people like me, Jews, Italians, really few Greeks, but there was a little Greek Orthodox church, and a few Irish people, but mostly it was Jews and Italian Catholics. And the Catholics all went to Catholic school. So in my grade, not my class, my grade, there were 3 people who were not Jewish. So on Jewish holidays, there were 3 of us, me, Michael Archulo, and Anthony Amtuzzi. And Anthony Amtuzzi was a lousy student. So it was me and Mike. And there were probably some girls, but mostly it was me and Mike. And I had no idea about any of the stuff Black people were going through, because I'm not even sure there was a Black person in my school. And it wasn't, I got a hint in the Air Force because they trained us, the Air Force's attitude was, we can't change the way you think, but we damn well will change the way you behave. You will treat each other with respect. And as they were teaching that, I was learning about things that I had never heard before. But until I came to Atlanta and had 2 very close friends who were African Americans, I didn't know about things like driving while Black was a crime, and jogging while Black is definitely a crime. Walking while Black is a crime. Sitting on a bench while Black is a crime. Anything a Black man especially can do draws police attention. And nowadays, it's become evident that in some areas, it can result in you getting shot. I had no experience. So from my perspective, I say, I'm a racist. And every time I come up with some part of me that I notice is racist, I change it. But I know that there must still be little pieces of racist thought patterns in my head that I picked up along the way that I don't even recognize as racist. And the way I find out about it is by listening to my African American friends when they talk about subjects that I'm not familiar with, and I go, holy crap, did I have that wrong? And then I get rid of that. And so,
or when they speak up and call you out, call you in, in a moment where you say something that's insensitive to the racial injustice or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm beyond that point. It's really, really subtle stuff that doesn't normally come out in conversation. There was an African-American columnist for the AJC. She was female. And the thing I loved about her was that there was the white position and there was the African-American position. She was African-American. She never took either of those. She always had her own unique view of what was happening. And I struck up a correspondence with her. And we had some, and I told her I'm a 60-something white guy, and can you explain to me a little more about this? And she told me about stuff that I had absolutely no awareness of, because there isn't a black point of view. The black point of view goes all the way from Farrakhan on one side, and the black, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, and the black Muslims and the Black Panthers on one side, to the NAACP or Martin Luther King, or people who want, more peaceful, less, and it's a spectrum. And so she told me about stuff, and like I said, I had two very close African-American friends, and they were both like, oh, wow, she's airing our dirty laundry to you. So she was talking about stuff that normally would never have come into my range of speaking and my range of knowledge. And it just changed who I was in that perspective.
Awesome.
Tremendously. Just like when I was against gay marriage. And I have gay friends, and we talk. I was like, okay, gay marriage is okay. And I went to gay marriages and I supported the people, but gay couples having children, that's just wrong. And I slowly got over that. And the final tipping point was I have friends, two gay women, who had a child. And one of the two was always a prune face. In all her family pictures, anytime I ever saw her, she looked unhappy. And she was holding that baby in her arms. And the joy and love and connection and tenderness and happiness and peace and fulfillment that was beaming out of her face with this big, beautiful smile, and her eyes wide open and sparkling, made me think, how can I espouse denying that to anyone? And so that totally flipped me on the gay couples having children. But it came by experience.
Yeah, I love that.
You couldn't talk me out of that, because that thought got placed in my head without my consciously accepting it. It was just there.
Yeah.
And so, those two groups of people have made a tremendous impact on my life and how I see the world. But I don't argue with Trump supporters anymore. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. I like that, two things that you said there, if it's impossible to change someone's mind through reason, if the opinion is not placed there by reason, I think that was really good. And then, you can't change the way, I can't change the way you think, but, you can change the way that you behave regardless of how you think, sort of thing. I think that was really good too. So I do want to kind of bring it back to kind of like the speaking up topic. It is also 8:00. We usually have these slated from 7 to 8-ish. So, if anyone has like a pressing, time commitment, feel free to hop off at any time. I think we still have a lot to cover. I just want to let you guys know that we want to be respectful of your time always, and that this is kind of an open forum and you can come and go as you need. So before we move on to our the next little topic, I think Brian had something he wanted to share.
Yeah, and it kind of ended up being beautiful that everybody else went, because it'll kind of tie into a little bit of everything. But it started with I'm not sure if it's Carlos or Carlitos. I'm just going by what I have on Zoom. But even to what April was sharing and what you shared, Anthony, about speaking up is being willing to set boundaries about what's acceptable for you, like the acceptable behavior, and then not compromising on that and holding fast in that. And especially like we look at the climate here, at least in the US, which is, we're not going to get into all that. But I mean, just even hearing like what April shared and what you shared with like experiences is even, you know, I can't speak for the entire Black community because look at me. I haven't gone through like anything that you all have probably had to deal with, like maybe like a tiny little smidge, perhaps maybe on one day, but being willing to help other people speak their truth or give them a platform to use their voice so they can speak up. And then to your point, like you said, is when you did this, you have these, they come out of the woodwork sometimes, other people who seem very irrational, probably because they are for whatever reason, and being willing to be like, hey, this is where I'm drawing the line in the sand, and now we have crossed that line, and then I have to disconnect, I have to break contact with you because this is no longer serving anybody, right? And a lot of that, like, and when you do that and when you honor those boundaries and those standards, you don't compromise them, it's amazing how for a lot of other people, their perspectives and their energy and how they approach things will also change. Like perfect example is him at work. As soon as he stood his ground and was like, hey, this is what's going on and this is how it's going to be going forward, like everything changed for the better, right? It may not have been an overnight thing, but over time it became what it is now. And I think if we stick to that and we're willing for ourselves, even when somebody brings that to us, is like, if I'm having a chat with Rachel and I overstep the line and she's like, hey, hold up a second, we're hitting this point and this is what's, so on and so on and so on. And if I'm like Frank and I'm willing to change because of that, then we're growing continually. And when we're growing like that and we're willing to do that, that's when via speaking up for ourselves or for other people, once we have that understanding, it's much more powerful. And I think it comes from a place of empowerment for ourselves and for others as well. That was just kind of my 2 cents on like just to sprinkle across everything that's been shared.
Yeah, I think there's a very strong connection with this whole speaking up topic that we're on. That's very, very strong correlation to boundaries. And boundaries, I think, boundaries is a whole nother community conversation. We'll definitely kind of bring that one up because I think there's a really strong correlation between what we're talking about now and that. And then that's a very, like boundaries is an incredible tool for, it's kind of like it helps you register when it's time to speak up, So real quickly, I love how in this TED Talk, he gave us tools because, a lot of times it's like they just tell a story or something, but I really liked how proactive he was about giving tools. A couple of those tools are, the mama bear, advocating for others, advocating for ourselves by taking perspective taking, the signal flexibility is great for the sales type of situation or with children. He talks about these pants or those pants, which one do you want to wear? It's a really nice thing that I think we can apply to more than just sales and children, but there's other situations where we can use that. Let's see, gaining allies, seeking advice, displaying expertise, becoming an expert by tapping into your passion. So, showing your passion and stuff when you speak up, it just gives you so much more power. So, these are kind of tools that he's given us to increase our power, which therefore increases the range of times when it's appropriate for us to speak up or not. So, what are some other? I wanted to just see if as a group we could kind of come up with some different ideas of ways that we can expand our power. Besides the ones that he listed for us. I feel like between the group here. There's definitely some more to unpack there, and how that can kind of help us. Like, what other ways can we grow our power in order to speak up better?
I can share something real quick, and then I'll probably have to jump off soon. But something that came to mind with several things that people said is, I think discernment is really important. You know, I worked in I was in the medical field for many, many years, and then I jumped over to the corporate side. And I began to see that it was really important to discern when and what was worth discussing and at what level. And I think it ties into something you alluded to at the beginning, Rachel, with your Facebook. I don't know the whole story, but what came to mind is our ability to, one, use the discernment. And I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Somebody walked by. The first thing is the discernment on whether or not something is important to discuss. Oh, the second piece. Most of my life, my study has been in the self-development industry, although I've been in the medical field, is, you know, the old saying by Socrates, know thyself. And I think when you really know at the core of who you are as a person, that discernment is a little bit easier, and we're less triggered by things that really don't matter. And when we know ourselves, especially given the political climate, like several people have alluded to, or whether it's in the workplace, I've gotten to a point, I know in my life, where I don't try to convince people of anything anymore. I do want to help humanity. My heart is for humanity and for us to heal. And so if my knowledge can help by sharing that knowledge, it just comes from a place of deep knowingness of who I am, of years and years and years of unpacking, overcoming trauma and you know, inequities in the workplace. But when we're no longer in that trauma, and which, you know, a lot of times people disassociate from the trauma, so you're easily manipulated. So I think anytime we feel triggered by something, we have to really look deep within ourselves and go, I wonder why. You know, I look at the political climate and people get so triggered on so many issues. And I had something happen recently. I can share that later in the talk if you'd like. But those are the two things that come to mind. But I think when you have a real deep knowing at the core who you are, you don't really have that need to, you know, to so much as convince someone, but you share from a real deep place of knowing. So
Discernment and knowing yourself were your two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so boundaries would fall definitely in that knowing yourself category.
Absolutely. And it comes effortlessly when you do know those boundaries. And here's the other thing is being able to walk away, regardless the outcome, you set the boundary, right? Whereas I think many people, I know for myself in my younger years, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was always so afraid of that outcome, whether it was losing a job, losing a friendship, offending a family member. I can no longer worry about that because my boundaries are my boundaries. And it's so freeing once you get to that point. And if you come from a place of love in setting those boundaries.
Yes, definitely. When you brought up the discernment part, there's actually a talk that we've done for previous community conversations, where she was talking about get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and sometimes you have to speak your truth. So it was a very, she only really said one sentence about that. The overall talk was get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
But she said, and I'm paraphrasing it, I'm not going to get it right, but with the going along with the discernment, is that saying, is it needed? Is it necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? Does it come from love? You know, it's kind of the idea. Not exactly. I'll have to kind of go back to that and kind of look at that again but that's absolutely, you know, one of those moments where it's like, do I really need to say something right now?
Right. And especially in the environment that we're in right now.
Yeah.
You know, I had an incident recently and I started to engage, and then I watched, and interestingly enough, this woman's a psychologist. So I thought, well, she should have a handle on where she is. And she was escalating because she was so passionate about, you know, what she believed and how stupid everybody else was, whatever. And those were her words. And what I realized in that moment, my discernment was just let her vent, let her say what she needs. There was no point, back to what you were saying, Brian, and when somebody's already made up their mind, or they're indoctrinated into that belief system, there's nothing you can do to change it anyway. And what would be the point at that juncture, at this time period, for me to engage at that level? So I diffused it by just being a good listener, and then, you know, shaking hands, saying goodbye, and that was the end of it. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Smiling.
See, I won't talk to you later, but yeah.
Yeah.
Smile and nod your way through it. And sometimes out of love,
Yes.
of course, out of love. But I wanted to add on, because that was a big thought I had listening to the talk, is when it comes to like personal power, to Deborah's point, which was so beautiful, is like, if you really know yourself and you know who you are, you know what your beliefs, what your values are, if you're really truly in alignment with that, then all this outside stuff that happens in the world that is completely out of our control, it can't break through anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then and it's not going to trigger you, and you're not going to go down that road, and it's not going to turn into just an explosion of emotions or whatever it turns into. And I have found for myself, being on that journey the last 6, 7 years, I've lost count, it's been a while, but of really discovering that, and then being willing to help other people reach that place,
Mm-hmm.
has provided so much just more abundance just all around. And so I think just power in general, if you really know yourself and you're willing to honor yourself and not compromise, like we were talking about with boundaries and such, then whether the other person gets it or not, or whether they accept it or not, it's not on you anymore. And then you don't have to take that on. And then to Deborah's point, you can, to protect your own energy and your own self and to take care of you, you can then just disengage and go your own path. And what I have found is by doing that and by sticking to it, people eventually come around because they see you living what you're speaking, where they're talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. And then that example that you become over time is what they're, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, they'll eventually come around. And then now, hey, you're that expert like Frank, who's been doing it for 30 years or however long he's been doing this thing. And now you have that much more influence and power because of it. So that's what I've got.
So I think that kind of falls in line with the display expertise.
What were you saying, April?
No, I said I need to get on that path, because when it's people, specifically people that are really close, like a mother-in-law or a best friend or somebody who you are tied to, and you don't know how to consistently set those boundaries because you want to make them understand, because you think it's obvious. Like everybody should understand. And it's like, you don't get it. And it's not, it's always out of love. You know what I mean? From my perspective, it's always done out of love, and you just don't get it. So I wrote down when you said setting boundaries, how do you know what's the difference from setting boundaries versus cutting off, right? So the group that I'm in, if it's not serving me and they're making fun, she's always so sensitive, she's always crying. When do I cut off and not feel bad that maybe I'll need them or maybe they'll need me later?
Well, April, I would say even just saying that you're too sensitive is a form of, that's not acknowledging your true feelings. That's not okay, right? And I think down deep inside, you know that. I've had people do that, or they'll make a derogatory comment and, oh, you're so sensitive. No, your comment was derogatory. It was not called for. So I think that's in honoring yourself, right? What feels good, and what is, that goes back to that outcome, right? Where I've stayed in a relationship or I've stayed in a friendship, And I think, what's the worst outcome? I'm going to set my boundary and be happy and no longer. Have you ever like stopped getting on social media or stopped doing something and you go, wow, I didn't realize how much time that was taking, how much energy. That's part of self-love, right? And honoring yourself. So
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, we have to cut it off. It's hard. Not always easy.
And if you're, and to kind of add on to what Deborah shared, it just from hearing how you bring it up and how you share it, it sounds like it's already crossed a boundary of some kind. Like there's already pain caused by it. And if it's creating pain, that's usually a really good sign that even if you don't know what the boundary is, it was a boundary of some kind somewhere for you. We crossed the line. And then out of love for yourself, you can be like, hey, I love you all, but this isn't for me. I need to do my own thing. And then you can leave that chat with a peace of mind for yourself. And regardless of what they think of you, that's not on you anymore. There's a wonderful woman, Katie Byron. She calls it, are you in your business? Are you in other people's business? Or are you in God's business? So it's like, what are you focusing on? Are we focusing on things we have no control over? If so, that might be where we need to reflect a little bit and then come back to truth. You know, what's real for April on the daily, right? And then start there and then build. And remember, it's not an overnight process. So have lots of grace and love for yourself along the way.
Nice. I think, Brian, you just spoke, you know, one of the things Adam mentioned was being one of the best ways you can be powerful is being powerful. Increase your power is being powerful in your own eyes. And, you know, relating, you know, when you said that, I was like, just immediately, it was like blinking, like a flashing red lights, like self-worth, 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 you know? So, you know, what is our time worth? What is our energy worth? What is our, you know, because we have our mental capacity, our emotional capacity, our spiritual capacity, like what is that worth? You know, so in those times where we're choosing whether to speak up or not, is it draining me in any way? Or, you know, like, is it going to drain me to speak up? You know, is it going to drain my health to speak up? I think that self-worth one is just a awesome one. And then Brian, you also mentioned becoming an example, like walking the walk. You know, I think that fits kind of into his category of, you know, displaying expertise, because, you know, just getting in there and just showing people that this is your truth and this is how you do it. That'd be great. So I think it's just about time to wrap up. But I do want to kind of just see if there's any other any other like ways that we can come more into our power to allow us to a broader range of times to speak up. Because I really feel like that was kind of one of the best parts about it was relating our power to our ability to speak up. So Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have landed yet. I mean, you know, these community conversations sometimes send me down like super deep rabbit hole, which I love. I geek out on this. But what's coming to mind is trust, and this trusting that I'm heard. Because what's the point of speaking up if I don't feel like I'm being listened to anyway? So while I haven't landed yet on the tool to create that trust, I mean, I guess actually I do have the tool. So I think there would be more willingness for people to, well, I'll speak from the I perspective. So it's a personal choice. For me to speak out if I trusted that I was actually being listened to and heard. And so the way to build that is to truly listen and hear others when they speak. So a tool for speaking out is actually to listen and hear more, because that will instill in me the trust that others do that as well. Because that's all I can do. I can only control what I'm doing. So yeah, that's what I've got.
As within, so without. Nice one. Cool. Any more? We're going to wrap it up. Last call. Any other ideas?
That First off, so I don't forget the Gryffindor shirt, totally awesome. If I see that right on Carlito over there. But I think part of it too, to Rachel's point, is sometimes you just have to speak whether people are listening or not. Because again, it boils down to if they don't listen to you, that's not on you. But it's important, like going back to Carlito's example, like with his work and his environment, the line was crossed and he spoke up, and thank God, thank goodness the people around him at work took that on in the right way, but it could have equally as gone the opposite way if they weren't willing to listen to him. But nonetheless, he stood up and spoke his truth, and he did what he had to do for himself. And I think that's a really big thing for us as individuals. And then over time, we'll just find the right people who are willing to listen. And then we'll create communities like this where we have people who, still different perspectives, but we'll all have a voice that can be heard amongst each other.
I think that's, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, April.
Just shortly, Brian, when you said that, immediately what popped in my head, there's been times where, you know how you may ask someone a question and then you reply and then they're like, oh, there's a cat over there. So like immediately thought about the people you needed to speak up until somebody will listen, because sometimes when you have gone through that experience and people are like, oh, well, what about this? And they're not listening, you may cower and you go, you know what, my voice doesn't matter. But I really appreciate you saying, just keep speaking up, because eventually the right ears will listen.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing about trust too is that sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, or if we feel that we're not heard. A question is that I learned a long time ago is to ask yourself, who told you that? So if you feel like you're not heard or that you're not going to be heard, subconsciously we seek out people that won't listen to us. And so it seems like, oh my God, nobody listens to me, when in reality, subconsciously, I don't know if you're familiar with the book Psycho-Cybernetics, but it's all, and that ties into the self-image. It's all about, it's about a plastic surgeon who, no matter what he did to change somebody's face, they'd be absolutely beautiful. And they'd still say, I'm not beautiful. And he'd say, yes, you are. And then he did all this research, realizing that it was a deep core issue of not feeling worthy and their self-image. So I think we tend to seek those things out, and that's a good tool to have.
Awesome.
Yes.
Got the book there. Cool. So it is now 8:23. I think we've kind of, we could always, I feel like we could always go and go and go and go. But, we are trying to keep these a little bit short, concise, powerful, impactful. We will be taking all of these community conversations and turning them into blog posts with kind of like a little recap, as well as the video. I think it's been recorded, I hope, Rachel.
I forgot to hit record, but it's on the live stream. We can download
it's on the live stream. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
And it'll go on YouTube, and then
So
you can access
we'll
it.
post this along with the past community conversations on YouTube. We also plan on doing just a real short little blog, just to kind of, because I love, there's always the topics that are covered there's always the points that are covered in the TED Talk that we usually end up talking about. But with this group, it's always amazing to see what other cool perspectives and ideas and stuff come out of it. And so we want to make sure we capture those, because that's really one of the things we love so much about this community, is just how tapped in and connected and awesome everyone is. And it's really great to see a group of people from all colors, classes, creeds, ages, sexes, all on this chat together. I think it's really cool. So we will keep you guys up to date with that, with the blog posts and everything. We're right now doing the community conversations once a month. We may increase frequency or not, I don't know. I think once a month is a really good place to sit for now. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate all of your input and your impact that you guys had on this conversation tonight, and also that you have out in the world. It's really cool what happens when people speak up. The last thing I will say is the number one way we can speak up right now is to vote. Not a political statement. Voting is a right, voting is a privilege that we have as Americans. please, everybody go vote. Make sure all your friends are going to vote. It's you know, the election's a few days from now, so it's a big one. It's a big one. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks for Rachel for starting the live stream and everything, and love you guys.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for your vulnerability.
Love you lots.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, all.